That American family in Mexico.
A suspect now in custody under investigation for the murder of that American family. 3 mothers and 6 children ambushed in a hail of gunfire. The latest on how 7-month-old baby Faith survived, hidden under a seat, and the 13-year-old hero who saved his siblings, walking 14 miles to get help.
Breaking overnight, Democrats declare victory in Virginia and Kentucky, where the Republican governor outvoted despite this plea from the president.
If you lose, they're going to say Trump suffered the greatest defeat in the history of the world. This was the greatest. You can't let that happen to me.
A recount now on the horizon there, all the fallout this morning. Impeachment bombshell. The key witness who now says his memory has been refreshed, revising his testimony, describing a quid pro quo, undercutting the president's defense.
Bitter Arctic blast. 6 states now facing a winter weather advisory. Icy roads already causing accidents as a deep freeze moves in for millions. Cancer scam? The Pennsylvania woman arrested, accused of bilking Good Samaritans out of thousands of dollars. How a podcast and her own husband led to her arrest.
Live in Times Square, this is Good Morning America.
And Good Morning America. Hope you're well this Wednesday morning. The Little Mermaid was fun last night.
Little Mermaid Live was fantastic. And Queen Latifah as Ursula, trending big. One of the highlights of the night, she really shined on stage and backstage. This is what she tweeted. This video saying, when you want your tentacles to shine, your tentacles to shine.
It was a great show last night. Shaggy with the crab, and I mean, it really, really was good. But we have more on that ahead. But first, we're going to begin with that breaking news. An arrest made in connection with the deadly ambush at that American family in Mexico. The brutal attack leaving 6 children and 3 mothers dead. But miraculously, some of the kids were able to escape. Tom Yamas is in Mexico with more. Good morning, Tom.
Michael, good morning to you. Police making that arrest here in Sonora, the same state where this massacre happened. And they made the arrest up near the border. And one of the reasons why they're looking at the suspect is because he had 2 hostages. He also had an arsenal of weapons. Several high caliber rifles were in his truck. Now, we do want to caution this is very preliminary in the investigation. And the bloodthirsty thugs who did this had several hours to get away after they committed that massacre.
This morning, ABC News learning new details about that ambush attack on an American family in Mexico. Overnight, relatives visiting the horrific crime scene that looks like something out of a war. This, all that remains of one of their SUVs. Mexican officials believe drug traffickers attacked the family, possibly confusing them as a rival gang.
I believe they were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Nobody could have anticipated that these 2 cartels were going to be in a war.
Mexican authorities say the gunman fired more than 200 rounds at the women and children. The family, part of a Mormon community that had been living in the border region for decades. The 3 mothers driving in separate vehicles, caravanning to stay safe. Some of them preparing for an upcoming wedding.
They never arrived at their destination, and then family members were too scared to drive over the road to find them. With all this going on, there was gunshots going on after the vehicle had burned. And
3 mothers and 6 children, including twin infants, shot and killed. Family members sharing these photos with ABC News. This is Ronita Miller holding her 8-month-old twin babies, Titus and Tiana, all 3 killed in the attack. Relatives say at one point one of the mothers got out of her vehicle with her hands up to show they were families. The gunman shot her point blank in the chest. President Trump reacting to the horrific news, tweeting, "If Mexico needs or requests help in cleaning out these monsters, the United States stands ready, willing, and able to get involved and do the job quickly and effectively."
Es un asunto que nos corresponde.
But Mexico's president saying their country will handle this alone, vowing justice. Elisa Stell spoke with our affiliate WPBF in Florida. She says her cousin Christine Langford, who was killed in the attack, may have been trying to save her 7-month-old baby Faith.
The mother tried to put the child on the floor under the seat in some way to save her life, but baby Faith is her name. She actually miraculously survived.
And so many relatives calling 13-year-old Devin Blake Langford a hero. They say he saved several of his siblings who had been shot, hiding them in some bushes as he walked 14 miles to get help amid what they describe as an all-out narco war.
He basically saw that cartel shooting. There were like 60 people shooting at them from all over the mountains around. And the little kid decided to get the kids away from where they were shooting and go into the bushes. That was courageous. 5
of the children taken out by helicopter, now being treated in Tucson, Arizona.
And again, we cannot stress enough how much that little boy is a hero. He saved all those children. We also want to mention, despite Mexico going at this alone, they are sharing information with the FBI. But this is a very remote location. Outside from where we are, it gets even more dangerous, Robin. But Mexican officials are calling this what it is, an atrocity.
It certainly is, Tom. Thank you. Now to overnight, the election results that are coming in for high-stakes races that could be a sign for 2020. Democrats winning big in Virginia, claiming a narrow victory in the Kentucky governor's race, but the incumbent there is saying not so fast. Lindsay Davis is in Louisville, has the latest for us. Good morning, Lindsay.
Hey, good morning to you, Robin. This building right behind me, that's where Kentucky Republicans had their watch party last night. And all in all, there was a lot to celebrate except for that top spot. Despite coming short about 5,000 votes, Governor Bevin is being defiant, citing voting irregularities and refusing to step down.
Overnight, Republicans close to losing their grip on the Kentucky governor's seat. Kentucky's Attorney General, Democrat Andy Beshear, claiming victory over the incumbent Governor Matt Bevin, enjoying a razor-thin lead of a few thousand votes.
Tonight, I want to say thank you to our union families that helped make this election happen.
Even with 100% of the votes in, Republican Matt Bevin is still refusing to concede. The Associated Press says the race is still too close to call.
There have been more than a few irregularities. This is a close race. We are not conceding this race by any stretch.
My expectation is that he will honor the election that was held tonight, that he will help us make this transition.
Even though the race was close, Bevin's loss in the bluegrass state could be a bad omen for GOP leadership, including Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who's up for re-election next year with just an 18% approval rating in his home state. Trump carried Kentucky by 30 points in 2016, but he was forced to rally support behind Bevin on the eve of the election in this typically red state.
And if you lose, they're going to say Trump suffered the greatest defeat in the history of the world. This was the greatest. You can't let that happen to me.
Now Trump's campaign is taking credit for what they call a stronger than expected performance, saying in a statement the president just about dragged Governor Matt Bevin across the finish line. But with no mandatory recounts for the governor's office in Kentucky, Bevin's options are limited and could lead to a long and drawn-out legal battle. In Virginia, a clearer upset for Republicans as Democrats flipped control of both the state house and the state senate.
This victory is not mine alone. It belongs to all of you.
Taking control of the full state government for the first time in more than 2 decades.
A big win for Virginia's embattled governor after that blackface scandal. Next up, Louisiana. President Trump heads there tomorrow for a rally, and this will be his 3rd visit to a traditionally Republican southern state in less than a week, which is definitely surprising, George.
It is surprising. One of the big things we're seeing, suburban voters in all those states moving towards the Democrats. Lindsay Davis, thanks very much. We're going to go to Washington now, and that major twist in the impeachment showdown. A key witness has now reversed himself and conceded that there was a quid pro quo with Ukraine, contradicting Trump's core defense. Our senior congressional correspondent Mary Bruce on Capitol Hill with the latest. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, George. Gordon Sondland was the president's handpicked point person in Ukraine, a Trump mega donor turned diplomat. He was quick to defend the president and initially testified that he could not recall many of the details, but other key witnesses here did, raising questions about whether Sondland was telling the truth. And now facing growing pressure, Sondland has revised his testimony. In a stunning reversal, Gordon Sondland, the U.S. ambassador to the EU, revising his testimony, detailing a quid pro quo with Ukraine, saying he told a top Ukrainian official they would likely not receive $400 million in military aid unless they publicly committed to investigate Trump's political rivals. That's not what he initially testified. When asked if there were any preconditions on the aid, Sondland originally answered no. But Sondland says his memory was, quote, refreshed by other key witnesses who contradicted his initial testimony.
It's never too late to do the right thing.
In a text exchange with another U.S. diplomat in September, Sondland claimed the president has been crystal clear, no quid pro quos of any kind, which Trump often pointed to in his defense.
The ambassador, who I heard was tremendous and a tremendous person, he was 100% for what we're saying, 100%. And if you look, he also said there was no quid pro quo. That's the whole ballgame.
But Sondland told investigators he was just repeating what the president told him on a phone call. Sondland also said the president delegated Ukraine policy to his personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, that the president just kept saying, talk to Rudy, and that the State Department was aware. Sondland says when he discussed Giuliani's role with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, Pompeo rolled his eyes and said, yes, it's something we have to deal with. The White House is dismissing Sondland's revised testimony, and the top Republican in the Senate says it's not likely to sway Republicans.
I will say I'm pretty sure how it's likely to end. If it were today, I don't think there's any question it would not lead to a removal.
House investigators are now summoning the president's acting chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, to testify here on Friday. Mulvaney, of course, undercut the president's defense when he admitted that there was a quid pro quo during a press briefing last month, a statement that Mulvaney later retracted. But the White House has instructed officials not to comply with this inquiry, and George Mulvaney is not expected to appear.
Okay, Mary, thanks very much. Let's bring in our legal analyst, Kate Shaw, constitutional law professor. And let's begin. I think a lot of people don't know that you can actually go back and revise your testimony in the Congress, but he was doing this because he feared threat of prosecution.
Right. I mean, I think he was facing a very real perjury possibility, right? So his testimony looked quite different and very much contradicted by some of this testimony we've seen come out over the last 24 hours. And I think he was rightly concerned about the possibility of perjury exposure. So I think that's why we've seen these revisions now.
So you've got the evidence piling up that there in fact was a quid pro quo. It kind of undercuts the president's defense and narrows the options for the president's defenders.
Yeah. I mean, look, so they have staked so much on this argument that there was no quid pro quo. And I think that has totally collapsed at this point. And it's not just the president, but his congressional allies who have been all in on this no quid pro quo. So
especially his original testimony, someone's original testimony.
Absolutely. And I think that they need to scramble to find a new strategy. I mean, one thing they might do is say, okay, so there was a quid pro quo, but that's diplomacy. Exchanges and promises and even threats are part of diplomacy. And that's true, but diplomacy is about the U.S. national interests, right? Using governmental resources to advance personal political objectives. That's not diplomacy. That looks like corruption.
So then that leaves one final possibility. They can say, you know what the president did was wrong, but it's not impeachable.
Right. And I mean, I think that the views of the American public on just how wrong this conduct was will be really significant. And I think we will see, you know, every time I think the president and his team require congressional allies to sort of scramble to find some new sort of path, you know, you could see a weakening of the support. And I think that as sort of we see polls shift, I think that the dynamics on the Hill could very much change. But I think that if there's already going to be a concession that something wrong happened, it's a question of just how serious that is. But if it looks like abuse of power and corruption, those are sort of at the heart of what the impeachment process is designed to target.
Finally, we have the president now putting up a wall from all of his aides testifying, all of his close aides. How strong an article of impeachment for obstruction will that be? That's what Adam Schiff, the chairman, has said he's going to try to do.
Yeah, and one of the articles of impeachment against President Nixon was obstruction and non-cooperation with Congress specifically. So there is precedent for drafting an article that is totally based on this failure to cooperate with Congress. I mean, I think that the substantive offenses will make for stronger articles of impeachment, but I would expect them to add one along those lines as well.
Kate Shaw, thanks very much. Michael?
All right, thank you, George. We're going to go now to that bitter Arctic blast that's moving in for millions. 6 states facing a winter weather advisory this morning, and the icy roads are already causing accidents. Ginger has the very latest for us this morning. Good morning, Ginger.
Good morning, Michael. I'm just seeing snow flying in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, shutting down highways. And then these pictures from overnight, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, a series of serious accidents that made their way through there. It's not just this hit of snow, but the cold that comes in. That's why we wanted to focus on North Dakota, South Dakota, and Minnesota. We put the streamlines here, which represent that high pressure, where it will be, just west of Pier by tomorrow morning. When that settles in, it's like taking the blanket off at night. No clouds to keep you warmer, and certainly that big push of northerly flow. And that's going to bring you a lot of the pink and purple. What does it mean? Minneapolis, you'll feel like 11 Thursday morning. I know KSTP's Ken Barlow's going to be all over that. Minot will feel like 6. And that's not it, guys. This sinks far south. I'm telling you, this cold front will blast all the way to the Gulf Coast. Numbers-wise, we're going to be looking at close to freezing there in Tallahassee, 26 Atlanta. Robin?
Really? All right, Ginger, thank you. Now, growing outrage over an alleged racist incident at a Buffalo Wild Wings restaurant in Illinois. A family says they were told to change tables because another customer didn't want to sit near black people. 2 employees were fired over the incident. And now we're hearing from the family. TJ Holmes is here with much more on this.
Robin, can I take your drink order? Would you like an appetizer? What race are you? That's the question you're not used to getting at a restaurant, and that's the one they got, all because one customer didn't want to sit, as you said, next to black people. But the outrage isn't that there might have been a racist in the room. The outrage is that the restaurant seemed willing to accommodate that racism.
Outrage this morning after a Buffalo Wild Wings employee in Naperville, Illinois, asked a customer the unthinkable.
Or he asked me, "What race are you?"
Justin Vall took his family and friends to dinner at the popular restaurant chain when a regular guest allegedly asked that the group, a party of 18, most of them children, be seated somewhere else.
I responded, "What does that matter?" And so the host said, "Well, we have a regular customer here who doesn't want to sit around black people."
His wife, Ashley Smith, shared the ordeal on Facebook.
You look at these boys, and they're all different. And they need to know that's okay.
Buffalo Wild Wings responded in a statement to ABC News. "We take this incident very seriously, and after conducting a thorough internal investigation, have terminated the employees involved." They add, "The chain values an inclusive environment and has zero tolerance for discrimination of any kind." And although the regular guest has been banned from all Buffalo Wild Wings, the damage has been done.
To see them try to understand is hurtful, right? Because that's something they shouldn't have to do.
The family and the attorney says we don't necessarily want a lawsuit. We just kind of want Buffalo Wild Wings to do the right thing. We'll wait on that. It was one of those kids' birthday. And now the issue, they're having to explain that the kids are having issues based on it. So awful situation.
And the emotion from the whole family, but for those kids. I mean, had those kids involved.
I can't even imagine that happening now. So tone deaf.
2019.
No.
2019.
But all the marches in the 60s were about. This is crazy.
Yeah. Thank you, TJ.
You got it, guys. You got it, guys.
Thank you, bud. All right, we're going to turn now to a really sweet story, okay? Overnight, a University of Texas basketball player made a big return to the court. There he is, Andrew Jones, playing the first game of the season after nearly 2 years away battling leukemia. Jones scored a career-best 20 points as the Longhorns defeated Northern Colorado 69-45.
To see him back on the court.
It's fantastic. 2 years away. I'm so happy to see him and come back and score 20 points, help your team out. And also this morning, I want you guys to take a look at this rescue in Canada. A dog escaping from its owner at a dog park, falling through a frozen pond, trapped in the ice, but thankfully firefighters were able to get in there in time, pulling the dog to safety in the city of Winnipeg, sharing the video, warning those ice surfaces are thin and fragile. Make sure as a person, you're mindful of that, and also for your pets.
That's right. Let's go to Ginger.
And we've got to get straight to those rainy cities, brought to you by JCPenney.
Guys, let's go.
JCPenney. Remember the little things. JCPenney. Remember the little things.
Get out and enjoy today. We've got sunshine and temperatures that will get close to 60 degrees. Tomorrow, too, not bad before the bottom falls out of autumn, and it's going to feel a lot like winter. Today, sunshine through the 50s, late morning through your noon hour to 57 around 3 to 4 o'clock. No rain today, but we'll track some during the evening rush tomorrow. The high 63 Thursday. We're 45 on Friday, cold and blustery. It will feel like we're in the 20s and 30s. And then Saturday, widespread frost during the morning, 55, though, on Sunday.
A lot more coming up, including the story out of Pennsylvania, a cancer scam. A woman is now facing charges for trying to get contributions. We'll be right back.
If there's going to be a sticker on your car, it has to mean something. That you got into college or crossed the finish line. Eventually.
What?
That you went someplace worth going. Or maybe you have a pain.